Good afternoon and welcome to More Tea Minister. My name is Ian. Today we are looking at a double bill of dark teas. Both of them are hailing from Japan. Now we've looked at an earlier example of this kind of tea some time ago on this channel when we looked at Koji Fermented Kurocha. In other words, Koji Fermented Dark Tea. Now, Koji is Aspergillus oryzae. It's the mold used in Japan for lots of culinary purposes, but also for making things like sake. So it's sake, miso, various other fermented products. And the example that we looked at last time from Curious Tea used yellow Koji. This time we are looking not at a factory product, but at something made on a very, very small scale on an independent farmer's own kind of mini factory, so to speak. And we have an example of tea fermented with white Koji, so Shirokoji. And we also have tea fermented with black Koji, so that's Kurokoji. So you might say it's Shirokoji cha and Kurokoji cha. So we've got two very different examples. Both of these are from You Know Me Life. The farmer in question is Ibu-san, and it's from the Iba Yu Tea Garden in both cases, which are to be found on Tanegashima Island, which is a very small island off the south coast of Japan. Noteworthy in terms of tea farming, not least because of the climate, where it is and its temperature and so forth, means that the tea that grows there is amongst the earliest to be growing and that can be harvested, but also because of a chemical makeup of the soil. Apparently it lacks some of the astringency that you might find in a similar tea to be found elsewhere in Japan. So I'm very much looking forward to doing this double bill. I don't really want to call it a compare and contrast. I just want to see what these two versions are like. What we might also do is take these side by side to save time and then go back and have another go at the yellow Koji fermented tea to help us get our bearings on what this is like. So we're going to take a look at the tea inside here and then we'll move on to brewing it. Back in a moment. So we're going to begin by looking at the packaging for our two Koji fermented teas. Hopefully you can see on this side we have white pu'er tea, or the white Koji fermented dark tea, and on the right side we have our black pu'er tea. And incidentally, the characters down here and down here, as far as I can make out from Google Lens, have something to do with the taste profiles you might expect. And then down here we've got the fact that these teas are constructed with white and black Koji. I enjoy the simplicity of this design. I like this sort of lilac coloured character in the background as well. I just wanted to show you the packaging because I think it's very, very nice. And now we'll move on to a close-up of the tea. So here we are looking at the two Koji fermented teas. On this side we have the white Koji fermented tea, and therefore on this side we have the black Koji fermented tea. In terms of appearance, naturally enough, the tea itself doesn't look very different. After all, if I understand correctly, the two teas, or the two samples of tea, are both the same. It's only the final processing in terms of Koji fermentation that makes them different. The only thing that I would personally say that makes them any different is there seems to be more stalk material in the white Koji than there is in the dark. That might just be an accident to processing. There is some, it may be a sampling error, to use the technical term, but it does look as if there is more stem material in the white Koji fermented tea than the black Koji fermented tea. Other than that, the tea leaves look much more intact than on the yellow Koji, but this is a newer product. This is from 2025, So anyway, let's move on now to our brewing and reviewing of the tea. See you in a mo. Hello and welcome to, I suppose, what we should call part 3A of our Koji fermented tea double bill. Or because we're going to take a quick reminder for ourselves of the yellow Koji fermented tea, we might call it something of a triple bill. So a very quick recap of the yellow Koji fermented tea. It's some curious tea. This particular one is from a 2023 harvest, although I should point out that a 2025 harvest version is available from Curious Tea as well. Made in a small experimental factory made from leaves and stems, as we've seen already. It undergoes a 1 month period of fermentation with yellow Koji. So, let's take a look at the colour. It's pretty dark. It's a sort of ruby red colour. You might not be able to see it too well. Just trying to get it. There you go, that's spot on. Ruby red with a touch of something darker in there. It's not quite opaque, but the tea really particles are pretty small. That's because the tea has been subjected to the usual Japanese way of kilgreen, which is to steam the tea, which does tend to fragment it. Especially, to be fair, once it's had a couple of years of sitting in a paper bag as well, which might crush it up a bit further. The smell, I remember this from before, very definitely a strong smell of fermentation. It's strange to have that kind of fermentation smell leading into something savoury, if you want to put it that way, because the mind is saying it should be leading into something either strongly alcoholic or something like, I don't know, a liqueur or something. But you've just got this hit of fermentation. It's not really yeasty. It doesn't have that built-in savoury note. It's just a pure kind of smell of fermentation product. It's very inviting, don't get me wrong. There's nothing off-putting. It doesn't smell rancid, it doesn't smell off. We went into this in more detail. It's just the nature of what it's like. So, let's see what it's like on the cup. That fermentation smell is very strong on the cup. I should point out the parameters before we go any further. 3 minutes, 95 degrees centigrade, 2.5 grams of tea, 250 mils of water, so quite hot, but not tremendously long steeping. It's going to be different for the other two. Got a nice mouthfeel, but it doesn't seem to be viscous. A kind of dark tea quality to it. That sort of bitterness that you would expect. Not harsh. The flavour lingers on the palate. It's refreshing, yet very satisfying at the same time. What we're going to do, although I don't want it to go cold, I'm going to move this to a different vessel, one where I can put a lid to keep the heat in it. And we'll keep it to one side, and once we've made the other two versions, we'll compare and contrast the colour, and then at the very least we'll see if we can just taste those two teas while this one is fresh in my mind, although we might try a triple tasting at the same time. Things are getting very, very complicated. Right, I will see you for part 3B. See you in a mo. Hello and welcome to part, what did we say, 3B of our video, where we finally get to review our two Tanegashima Koji fermented teas. On my left, we have the Shirokoji fermented tea, the white Koji, and here we have the Kurokoji, the black fermented tea. And here, for reference sake now, we've got the yellow Koji fermented tea, which as you can see Remember, it's very dark red, kind of ruby red. Both of these are much more yellowy bronze colour. From my perspective, I would say the Shirokoji fermented tea, the white Koji fermented tea, is slightly darker. I've tried to brew them exactly the same, and thankfully the brewing parameters as given by You Know Me Life are the same. This one, on the other hand, is slightly less opaque. I think there's more particulate in this one. Again, it's just fragments of tea, not a reflection of a quality issue or anything like that. I did notice that the teas smelt very different on the dry leaf, and they smelt very different brewing. They both remind me of opening up, well, a lot of the kind of cooking we've been doing over Christmas here, because it's in between Christmas and New Year 2025 as I film these. The Shirokoji reminds me of digging out the dried spices to make a Christmas cake, and the Kurokoji reminds me of the dried fruit that you would also put in a Christmas cake. So let me give that a try now it's finished brewing. Yeah, it's got the fragrance of a spice. There's a hint of sweet spice, but it's really more like something like a black pepper. Yeah, the fragrance, but the slight savouriness of a black pepper. And over here, it's the sweetness of fruit, but it's not a lush, ripe fruit. It is much more like a dried fruit. So, very interesting that you get such a different scent profile. Let's pour very little of the Shirokoji fermented tea, the white Koji. Same on the nose, that kind of savouriness, fragrance of a spice. It is quite sharp. I think that was a spot-on description. Not overbrewed, but just sharp. That's really interesting. Wow, that really has got quite a punch to it. Spice and astringency, like a spice-like astringency. That's really quite potent. Let's try this one. Once again, a kind of dried fruit, but perfumey. Yeah, that comes through on the cup. Very nearly poured it into my nose then. Well, that's not a good look. That sweet edge has really... There's a slight perfumey fragrance, but with a sweetness that's kind of that's substituting for the astringency. That's what I was trying to say. It's not covering it, whereas this one is astringent and perfumey. This one is sweet and perfumey. That's really what it's like. It's not pure dried fruit. As I say, it's got the same perfumey, slightly astringent quality, like a spice cupboard or something like that, but this one's got the dried fruits. This one has just got the straight up black peppery, turmericy, astringent spice note. But you can see how they've got the same family tree. I mean, it's the same tea. It's just been fermented with a different mould. And it has come out differently. This one lingers longer on the palate. They've been brewed the same way. 5 grams, let me get this right, 5 minutes, 80 degrees centigrade, 5 grams of tea, 300 mils of water. This one was, the yellow was much hotter, you may recall. And you can tell a kind of similar family tree. So I assume the tea itself is contributing a lot to this. I should point out that a lot of extra information on both of these teas can be found on Nano Shan's YouTube channel. I'll put a link to that. And you can buy them teas from there, although I bought them from You Know Me Life. I'm going to try that sweet one again, because it really does fill the whole palate with that kind of astringent, perfumey note, not the astringency. I can't believe how potent they are. For low temperature brewing, I suppose you would have to do that if it's based on a sencha green tea. But they're just absolutely filling the sinuses with this kind of perfume note. Personally, I can see a time and a place for the black peppery, astringent, turmeric-y kind of taste, especially if you like bitter things. Things that are meant to be bitter, not overbrewed. This one, I like that combination of the perfumey that you feel is going to lead into something astringent, but there's this sweetness and fruitiness that's just sort of backing it up. It is very different to this one. I don't know what the yellow koji would be like if it was brewed the same way as these. I didn't want to fiddle, I just wanted to stick to the parameters as set. You certainly wouldn't want to make either of these any hotter. They'd just be overwhelming. So these have definitely, I think, got the right parameters. My mouth is just completely filled with this. Are they easy to get hold of? Well, you've got two different, at least two different vendors selling it. I think Nano Oshan are the only non-Japanese vendor, but there's You Know Me Life and perhaps others who are selling it domestic and international. But Nano Oshan's the only one doing it non-Japanese, doing it international, so to speak. Which would I recommend? I would recommend both, but especially the sweet one. You really got to like black pepper, turmeric, something pretty sharp. I think to get the best out of this one, but that perfumey quality is really quite extraordinary. This one, perfumey, but with that extra sweetness of dried fruit, which I think is very appealing. They're both unlike anything I've had before. They aren't brewing parameters, different koji molds, different processing methods. This one comes across much more like a standard dark tea. That potent fermentation taste. These two, you've got the sort of products of fermentation without the amount. I think these are also fermented for less time. That one's a month. I think this one's only a week. Check Nano Oshan's video for further details. So, easy to brew. I would stick to those parameters. Quite easy to get hold of for something that you would think is fairly specialized. I would try and get both to do a compare and contrast. But if you only like bitter, go with the Shiro. If you only like sweet, go with the Kurokoji. So it's a hearty recommendation from me, just depending on what kind of flavor profile you like. So all that remains for me to do is to say happy steeping and God bless.